So good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Today we're gonna be talking about job and internship search strategies. And I'm Joseph Chatan. I'm a career advisor with the FIU Career and Talent Development Department. And I'm the advisor specifically for engineering students. So a couple of my examples and some of the things that I'm going to talk about today is specific to engineering students. It's broad enough for everyone, but just to kind of get that message or that connection there. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you could type it in the chat. I don't have a co-host today, so I kind of have to juggle everything on my own. But if you guys do have any pressing questions, don't feel like you have to wait till the very end. Right. So not sure how many of you guys have seen this before. We send a newsletter every 2 weeks to the College of Engineering, and it usually has different events that are coming up, different employers that are going to be having info sessions, specifically engineering employers, job postings, internships, workshops that might be coming up, and internship postings and job postings that have an approaching deadline. So definitely, if you guys do see it in your FIU email, I know FIU sends a lot of emails, but if you are in that active job or internship search phase, definitely keep an eye out for this newsletter. So some learning objectives that we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna be talking about the advantage of internships, how to set job search goals. We're gonna be going through a lot of this stuff in depth. And at the very end, you should have a solid grasp of the steps that you need to take if you are actively looking for an internship, or if you are approaching graduation, and the steps that you should be taking to secure that full-time job once you finish up your degree. So I have some statistics here. So 20.2 million, that's how many students are enrolled in general in higher education institutions across the US. And you can see there down in South Florida, we have FIU, FAU, UM. But just to kind of give you guys some perspective, 1.9 million, that's how many people are going to be graduating this fall semester. So that is essentially your competition. And I have this question here: what do you think these people are competing for? I think it's pretty obvious, but they are looking for jobs or internships. So just so I always think numbers kind of frame things a bit better. So we're going to be talking about branding before we jump into the job search or the internship search part of the presentation. But the thing you really need to think of is it is a competitive marketplace, I would say, in terms of looking for jobs or looking for internships. You have to kind of think about the things that set you apart to help you, be at the forefront of those opportunities. And what that all revolves around is what this kind of says right here. What is your brand? So it's who you are, how are you great, and why you should be sought out. So it's just basically thinking or doing some insight into what sets me apart from the other students at FIU, or specifically the other engineering students in my degree program. So you're kind of thinking about certain things or skill sets, like, for example, do you consider yourself a problem solver? Are you a team player? Do you consider yourself to have excellent presentation skills? So those are oral communication skills. So thinking about those qualities that you have that helps you stand out, and making sure that you incorporate them into the way you write your resume, the way you write the cover letter, how you interact with employers at networking events. How does your social media platforms look like, specifically LinkedIn? And just kind of framing yourself from all of those different, platforms can put you in a good spot to be a standout candidate for employers. Some of those things, like I kind of mentioned, it could be, your past employments, if you've had past internships. Currently, if you are I know this presentation is for IEEE, but if you have been, active in the org, and you are, let's say, for example, on the e-board, or you have some kind of leadership position, that could be a part of your brand. Research projects, everyone's going to have their senior design ultimately on their resume, or it should be. But if you've done any other smaller projects for your program, from your junior year onwards, the way you word those projects on your resume, if you have something like GitHub, if you have them on your LinkedIn, just making sure that your brand is consistent across all these different experiences are going to be to your advantage. And, I just have these pictures here with Dunkin', Starbucks. What do you like in terms of like the brand? Which one kind of, at least from society's perspective, which one is the more affluent brand? Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Nike, Adidas. So you can kind of get these from one another, and you can kind of take that example and apply it to your own personal brand. And now we are actually going to talk about some more things relating to branding, but this is called the NACE Career Readiness Competencies. I'm pretty sure most of you have not heard of NACE. It stands for National Association of Colleges and Employers, and it's basically an org that was formed, I don't know how long ago, but it's just, a commitment to kind of identify the top skills that employers look for entry-level jobs and for internships. And the key word there for jobs is entry level, not, mid or upper level positions that need previous experience, but the ones that you kind of, put your foot through the door for those roles. So it's 7 areas, as you could see here: problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork. It's just 8 different ones there. And if I could get some ideas, what do you guys think from this list, especially from the engineering perspective? What do you think the number one skill that employers look for are from this list?
Teamwork and collaboration.
Okay, so teamwork. Can I get just one more?
Oral.
What do you guys think?
Communication,
Oral, okay.
For sure.
It's actually critical thinking, problem solving. So good ideas, good guesses there. The second one was work ethic, and it was teamwork, and then we have oral written communication. But don't get too laser focused on this. They're all important. It's not like, if you don't have this, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You should focus on all of these different skills. And the reason why problem solving or critical thinking is the number one skill that engineering employers look for is if you are going into industry or the private sector, at the end of the day, in the private or corporate world, it's all about stocks, shareholders, dollars and cents, results, outcomes, making things more efficient. So if you can position yourself in a way, at least on your resume, in your interview, in your networking sessions, that you are someone who is results driven, or you are able to critically think and solve issues, that's going to put you at an advantage compared to other students. So that could be another skill or competency where that could relate to your brand. So it's always going to be different for each student. Oh, and then number 8 was global intercultural fluency. I think most of these are pretty much straightforward in terms of what they mean. The only one that you might be wondering about is career management. And what that one stands for is basically being able to identify the skills and requirements that an employer is looking for, and then just being able to reflect and understand what you bring to the table in regards to those requirements and those skill sets, and then effectively communicating that to the employer, ideally in an interview. So that's really what that is: identifying your strengths and your competencies as it relates to the position you're applying for, and just communicating that, to that employer. So a couple quick facts here. Up to 80% of positions are usually filled without the employer posting the position, right? There's on Indeed, Monster, company-specific websites, LinkedIn, of positions that are actually posted. Most are filled through referrals. Number 2, successful job candidates use multiple job search methods. So don't box yourself into just one platform. Sometimes I see students who just use LinkedIn, they just use Indeed. But what you really should be doing in reality is spreading your applications out across multiple platforms. There's this one: average American with a bachelor's degree has about 10 different jobs between the ages of 18 to 34. And as you could see, that sounds like a lot, but it's just the beginning of a lifelong process, right? So just a couple things there. FYI, I'm going to send this PowerPoint at the end, so you'll have this for reference.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to jump into the actual job internship search process right now, and it always starts with the resume. because you can, maybe let's say you consider yourself an effective communicator, an effective networker, you do really well in interviews, but if your resume is not industry standard and what employers look for, you're going to be at a substantial disadvantage because the tracking system or the software that employers and employers that you have a genuine interest in is going to make the process a bit easier. You can also think about a mentorship or finding a mentor if you like. You don't have to necessarily have one, it's not required. But I know some students who want to pursue the academic route or research route usually find mentorships from their faculty members or their professors. And then, of course, the whole internship search process, applying for positions, tailoring your resume and your cover letter to the requirements, it's super important to put a lot of effort into that because it's ultimately what's going to get you the call back for the interview. But once you get the call for the interview, it's really how you're going to sell those skills and experiences that you have on your resume in oral form, which would be the interview. So a couple things here when it comes to the resume. The one on the right is what we call an industry standard resume. You want to be doing things like using you don't have to use these font sizes, but I would say keep it conservative. There's times you Roman and Calibri. Just don't use anything that is kind of ridiculous, like Comic Sans or Century Gothic. Kind of stay away from those fonts. You could go as small as 10. If you're someone who does not have as much experience, you could go as big as 12, but definitely not bigger than 12 because then you run into having multiple pages. And if you go smaller than 10, it just gets too tiny. You can use narrow margins, which is 0.5 inches, which is like what's that one on the right. And then if you go as big as 1 inch, if you're someone who might not have as much experience, you kind of fill the page in a bit more and you don't have that, huge white space at the end. You should be segmenting your experience section. So don't just do experience. And then under that section, you have work, internships, projects, just the whole thing. It just gets very difficult to identify what experience is what. And it usually, if an employer is recruiting for an internship, they might be more interested in looking at your projects versus work experience. So definitely just make it as easy for them and for yourself by having separate sections. So just like that resume there on the you want to make sure you have bullet points that start with action verbs. Always one sentence per bullet point. If you have two, you never want to do full stop in the same bullet point and then keep writing. Always one sentence and then 1 or 2 pages. If you have enough experience to have a full second page or a page and a half, that's fine. But for the traditional, college student, 1 page is what we're kind of going for. All right. So this slide is, the purpose of this slide is just to kind of give you guys a bit more of a self-reflection. It's more important, I would say, for engineering students that the degree is important compared to something like College of Arts, Sciences, and Education, where the major doesn't matter as much for some positions. But you want to think about the challenges and the things that you want to do in the short term and in the long term as it relates to your career. And you kind of start looking at which companies are working on those types of things. Then you start looking at the types of positions, whether it's a job or an internship. And then when we kind of get more into like the education type of things or the GPA or the coursework, that's what you want to kind of think of it from the top down. Give me 1 sec, guys. Okay. Here we go. So what you want to look for next is a couple of things here. Let me check the chat if anyone has any questions. Okay. So you want to think about the location because you could have, you're doing everything you need to, but let's say the internship or the job is in a different state. If you're not willing to relocate for that summer, or if you're not willing to relocate for that full-time entry-level position in, let's say, New York, then it's kind of like the end of the road, right? So you could be like the top candidate that the employer is looking for, but if you're not willing to travel to any of those locations for the role, then it's kind of not, it's, again, you're just in a roadblock there. So thinking about the location is super important. Sometimes I get students who want to stay in the South Florida region, or maybe they want to stay in Miami. Then, I mean, that's fine if you need to stay or you would like to stay, but just think about the fact that you're going to have limited options, of course, compared to if you were open to the entire US, but you might not find positions that you have a specific interest in. Like if you want to do something electrical engineering, you might not find that specific role if your search radius is 50 miles in the Miami region. So just some things to consider there. Think about your skill sets, what you bring to the table, your interests, your passions. That goes back to the branding and digging deep to see what makes most sense for you. Thinking about work values, and then of course compatibility with personality. If you consider yourself to be an introvert versus an extrovert, some of these roles are kind of leaning more towards one or the other. Not to say if you are an extrovert, you can't have a position that's going to be mostly related, to introvert tendencies, but just a couple things there to help you reflect. So this slide, you want to, especially when it comes to, if you're attending like a conference or a career fair, you're attending an event, you want to think about maybe 5 or 10 organizations that you would like to work with. If those orgs are going to be at that event, that career fair, that conference, you want to do as much research as you can. That's really the meat of it, because the more you research and the more background info you have about a specific company or a position, the better position you are going to be in to kind of have an effective conversation with that recruiter. So, meet people, strategize. You want to also create a second list, just like a backup list of companies or things that you have an interest in terms of your job search. And the most important part when it comes to this whole planning phase is you want to keep a log of everything you've done, because once you start applying for 10, 15, 20, 25 different things, it gets very hard to remember when you applied, when the application deadline was, who you spoke to. So whatever works best for you. And I think we have this one here where this is just like an Excel sheet that you could have. And whether you want to use numbers on Mac or Microsoft Excel on Windows, but just like a very structured way for you to remember what you applied for. Because if it's like 4 or 5 positions, of course you could remember that much, but you just don't want to be in the awkward position where you applied for something and the recruiter calls you for an interview because they're interested, and you forgot that you even applied for this job. You forget the name of the person, the role, and you want to be in that position where you have to say, who is this? Which position was this again? Because then that's obviously going to be a not so good look. So some different ways that you can find jobs or internships. Of course, I'm pretty sure, I hope you guys know that you all have access to Handshake. It's fiu.joinhandshake.com. You just log in with your My FIU details, and there is a really active job and internship search board on Handshake. The fall semester is the peak to be looking for those types of roles. The spring is just as busy, but just a bit slower than the fall semester. But apart from that, you could also attend career fairs. Before we had it in person, but because of COVID, it's virtual career fairs. That's all accessible through Handshake. You can view employer info sessions. Sometimes employers will do workshops just like this, specific to their company. Sometimes they will do, different things related to their job recruitment strategies. But the good thing about this is, let's say that you see company ABC is going to be doing this info session, and you saw that they had this internship or job posted, you would be in a very good position if, let's say, you apply for that role, and then the actual day of the info session, if the format of it is like Q&A or some kind of open discussion or just a networking event, that's your chance to give like an elevator pitch and to kind of bring up some of these things that, hey, I saw that you guys had this position doing ABC 123 that aligns with my goals in terms of this or that. And just to let them know that you've already applied. Can they tell you some more in terms of like the timeline to call people for interviews? So when you kind of come off on that strong footing, you're in a much better place compared to a student who did not do any of that research ahead of time and just kind of showed up to the event. So just some tips there. I think I have another slide in a couple about with some different websites, but you can also find job sources from direct contacts with employers, whether you're connected with them on LinkedIn or on a different professional website. Networking events, just like I mentioned earlier, 80% of those roles are often filled through networking. And then professional associations. So personally, you have like SHEP, NSBE, SWE, BEA, IEEE. Those are all professional organizations. But if you just do some research and you see other associations within the engineering space, those are also good ways to get find or see positions or full-time jobs or internships. So here's another one. More than 80% of students who had full-time jobs before graduation connected face-to-face or virtually, I guess, with COVID with employers. So, just kind of think of it, even though it's virtual, just remember when we were at FIU or in person, you would be, let's say, attending the in-person workshops, the networking events, the info sessions, the career fairs, the conferences. When you get to have that human interaction, that face-to-face with an employer, it's much better compared to if you just kind of sat behind a computer and applied and that was it. So not to say you're not supposed to do that, you should, but in addition to applying for things on your own, making sure that you have those interactions with employers in relevant settings is going to be to your benefit. So just a couple bullet points there in terms of like events where you could kind of get that face-to-face or quote unquote virtual face-to-face with employers was info sessions. We used to have on-campus interviews. We're probably going to shift back to that whenever we get back to in-person events at FIU. But conferences are super good. I think the next one is, I think SWE was in the last 2 weeks or week and a half. But as far as I know, the next big conference is BEA in February, which is going to be virtual, I believe, and NSBE in March, which probably will be virtual as well. The FIU Career Fair, that's going to be in February. You can see the dates in your Handshake account. And then, of course, networking, LinkedIn. So just a couple tips here to, how to connect with employers virtually. So on a couple statistics in these slides, you guys could see that one of the number one ways to find, or one of the number one resources to find those types of positions are employer-specific websites. Sometimes when you apply for these roles if it's posted on Handshake, Indeed, Monster, wherever, it will direct you to their website. So you went through FIU Handshake, but when you click apply, it directs you to their website. Referrals from friends, career fairs, conferences should be on this list. Faculty members are also good, just because they have some of your faculty members have had industry experience, so that's always a good way to kind of see if you could find something through them or through referrals. And then just a couple tips here on who could be your network. So it doesn't always have to be, professionals in the field, whether that be employers, career services people, faculty members. It could be literally anyone. So the most immediate network that you guys have right now is your, IEEE members. That is your network, because you're eventually all going to go on to have, wonderful engineering careers and, kind of move around different companies, different roles. So kind of fostering that relationship from the very beginning is ultimately going to help you in the long term. I won't read through all of these, but just a couple ideas of what your network can be. The hidden job market, as I've mentioned a couple of times so far, you can learn more about your chosen career field. So if you thought that engineering was going to be this or that, or this facet of engineering was going to relate to ABC 123, kind of networking with professionals in the field, especially through LinkedIn right now, which is super important. is one way to kind of expand your knowledge in the field or in the job market. You could also reach out to people who are doing what you want to do, whether it's in the short or long term, and ask if they would be okay with doing a informational interview. I haven't had or haven't heard of anyone really turning it down if they couldn't do it at a certain time frame. Just maybe something in the future. But a good way, if this is something that you are interested in, is to make use of the LinkedIn alumni tool. So if you go on LinkedIn alumni and you just type FIU in, you'll see everyone who went to FIU who is active on LinkedIn. And you could kind of narrow it down by major, whether it's, electrical, mechanical, whatever that looks like for you. And that's one thing that you have in common with alumni from FIU. So just, being very strategic with the message to them to see if they would be okay to, meet virtually to have a quick conversation about what you want to do, what, just to learn some more about what that person does. That's, could be a good way to expand your network. And, you never know, something could come of it. They could say, hey, we actually have a position doing ABC 1, 2, 3, and then that's one way you could kind of get your foot through. So talk to everyone the informational interviews, those professional associations. I know some students like to create business cards. Well, I remember when students went to the conferences, they would actually have some, create business cards. You don't have to. It's just another way to help you stand out. I know the website they use was, I think it's called Canva, where you could kind of design stuff there. They have a free tier that you could use instead of the paid one. Just grow your connections, LinkedIn, just everything here that you kind of need to kind of know for networking. So a couple other job search websites here, industry specific ones, company specific websites, BuzzFile, there's Vault. If you guys are interested in working for the federal government, there's usajobs.gov. If you have an interest in like the FBI, CIA, that's where all the applications go through. It's a bit different, the resume and the whole job search process is. I won't get too in depth with that for the federal job search part, but if you are interested, you could always send me a follow-up email, or we could meet to talk about what that would look like for engineering students. So we are going to actually talk about this next, which is what we call SMART goal setting. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of this: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So let's say, for example, I know this is from spring, just pretend like, we're going to fast forward to January. But if you were going to create your resume, that's when you would start February 28th, get the critique from a career advisor, or attending drop-ins in March 1st, revise, make changes March 3rd, make your cover letter on the 5th, get that critiqued on the 6th, start actively applying for specific roles that you have an interest in. And the biggest thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but you need to tailor your resume and your cover letter for every single position that you apply for. Don't make the mistake of using the same resume and the same cover letter, just because, again, these applications go through software, because there's just not enough manpower for someone to go through. If they have like a caseload of 50 positions, for just one position, you could easily have 500, 800 people applying. So software scans the resume. You want to make sure you're using the keywords that they have in their requirements and in the job description, making sure that's reflected on your resume. General takeaway is I should look at your resume, look at the job description, and it should click that you are qualified and you have the requirements and the skills that the position is asking for. You're probably not going to have every single thing, which is fine. No one's perfect, but you should try your best as much as you can to tailor for each role. So applying for 10 internships or 10 jobs, it's going to be 10 different resumes and cover letters tailored specifically to the needs of that position. Okay, so this one is, here we go. So these are attributes that employers are, what they consider to be the most important. I won't put you guys through it. I'll just kind of skip through it. But the number one thing, specifically for engineering students that employers look for, are internships. This may or may not come as a surprise. It's just the culture for engineering students is internships. 1 or 2 is a goal that we're looking for. And what happens is, if you, and let's say, for example, your junior year, you do an internship, more times than not, you will get a job offer in your senior year where they convert you from an intern to a full-time job. It's not guaranteed by any means, But even if, let's say, for example, it doesn't work out that way, just having an internship on your resume is going to put you at a substantial advantage in your senior year compared to a student who did not have an internship. Also, don't feel like if you did not have an internship, it's kind of the end for you. That's not true. There are other ways to kind of bulk up your experience and your resume to kind of stand out as much as a student who did have an internship. And most of the experiences that I've seen for students who have not had internships kind of comes in the form of lots of projects, specifically, the senior design, which is like the capstone of your program. Number two is employment during college. Doesn't have to be employment in terms of specific to engineering. It could be retail experience. Remember, we're kind of referencing back to the competencies we looked at the very beginning, the problem solving, the teamwork, the communication skills. So if, let's say, for example, in your experience working let's say a good store, let's say like Home Depot. Let's say you're an associate at Home Depot, not related to engineering in any way, but you've demonstrated exceptional teamwork ability during your time at Home Depot, and you kind of have that worded in a way effectively on your resume, and also when you sell yourself in the interview, you're going to be in a good spot because the employer is going to say, hey, this teamwork competence or this teamwork skill is going to be transferable over into an engineering role. Volunteer experience is number 3, college major, number 4, and then just a couple of things. Relevant coursework is more so important for internships. When you get to your senior year, you don't need to have relevant coursework on your resume as much just because you've taken all the courses, you have the degree. GPA, the standard industry standard is a 3.0. Most employers do ask what the GPA is. If it's below a 3.0, it's not going to rule you out for any position, but just kind of be prepared to have that conversation, because it could be like you got sick or you had to look after someone who was sick. It could be a ton of different reasons why, but the main thing is just if it is below a 3, don't be trying to wing that conversation for the first time, whether it's in an interview, a networking event, just be ready. I think college reputation was 8. So kind of referencing back to the competencies, kind of hope you guys are kind of seeing the connection here, but you want to infuse these skills into your experience section. Sometimes I'll see students list these skills under the skill section here at the very end, or I'll see it listed in the summary or in the summary of qualifications. That's fine. It's not to say you shouldn't put it there, but just make sure it is supported in the way you word the bullet points. So if, let's say, for example, you have team player listed, or you want to infuse team player into your bullet points, right? If it's like listed as team player under skills, and I read a bullet point that says works in a team of 4 to accomplish ABC, 1, 2, 3, that supports your claim that you are a team player. Yeah, so there we go. So just infuse all of these skills as much as you can into the wording of your experiences, whether it's work experience, internships, projects, etc. This is just like a table that you could use when you are brainstorming. How can I infuse these skills like problem solving, teamwork, communication skills into the way you word those experiences? It's just a very structured way to kind of brainstorm. So that's really what this slide is. So you're just writing down, the different types of experiences that, show that you evaluated, you calculated. So just some action verbs there. So this might be useful, it may not, but just a good structured way to brainstorm to kind of bulk up those experience sections. Great. So just some keys to job success. We're not finished yet. We have about 50 minutes, but just make sure you set those goals. You kind of think about your brand and think about opportunities that are going to be the most beneficial for you. Just being very strategic in your job search process. So I'm going to get more in depth with this in a bit. I'll skip this slide. I'm not sure you guys have heard of Parker Dewey. They actually offer virtual internships if you are looking to kind of get into that, internship search. It's more so project based. It's not the traditional engineering internship per se. And this was back from April, but they're still actually offering project based internships, and they're all remote. You don't have to go anywhere. and you just work within a specific time frame, and then at the end of that internship you kind of present all of your research, everything you've done, to that employer. So this is also a great way to bulk up your resume. And this is if you actually just let me actually find it for you. Hold on. It's the website. Find you Parker too. This is actually the website, and you could just create your account. Look, just a couple, things here that you could kind of see. Couple more stuff in the information as how it works. If it's all paid, it's not free, but just a great way, another option for you to kind of build on your experience and to apply for internships. Let me get back to this. Sorry for this, guys. Let me go through real quick. All right. All right, so actually now we are gonna do a hands-on walkthrough of what Handshake looks like. I'm pretty sure this is like an old preview of what Handshake used to look like. So let me just switch over to this, this is what your Handshake, thing looks like. I'm not sure if you guys are seeing this. Can you guys see my screen? The Handshake?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right, cool. So what you'd want, this is like the actual like hands-on walkthrough of what you'd want to do. You'd go to jobs. And when it comes to engineering, you guys really should be using the filters as much as you can. That's really what's going to narrow down what you're looking for. You can see right here, it says 7.4 thousand jobs. That's just in all. So let's say you open filters, put full-time, of course, paid, and then you could put the industry if you want. I'll just leave these blank for now, just so you can get some more specific results. Let me actually put this one, engineering, civil, mechanical, other. Let's say, for example, I was a mechanical student. I put this one. And then now you can see it's down to 1,125, which is still a lot, right? So just with these filters, I can use keywords like, for example, entry, kind of meaning for entry level. And then here we can see this first one here, entry level engineer with Meat and Hunt in Tampa. There's a couple different things. So you can see with this keyword, it's 129, which isn't bad. If I open back up the filters and I kind of narrow it down by, let's say, industry or something else specific like job function, it's going to get even smaller. But this is kind of like the meat of what you should be doing. And if I open up this entry level engineer position in Tampa, job description, as I kind of was mentioning before, this isn't a good one because they don't really have like the requirements. Let me see if I could find another one real quick. Here we go. So this is what some employers, they will give you a very meaty job description. Some of them will not, but whatever they give you, you just kind of have to work with it. So this is a good one. You would want to make sure you're using the same keywords that they're using in this job description. So words like work, analyze, let's say prepare, work, just kind of pulling from this, just so that when it goes through the software, you're kind of, getting all those check marks or those plus ones. And then you see how they have here, excellent, clear, and concise oral and written communication skills. You can have excellent communicator or whatever in your summary of qualifications or in your skill section, but the way you word those bullet points should have supporting evidence to state your claim as to what you've done that demonstrate that you have excellent communication skills. Then, of course, you'd be looking at the qualifications, making sure that you kind of meet some of these things. But that's really what it is, just kind of using whatever they give you to tailor your resume and your cover letter to the role. So that's kind of what the job search looks like. If you are looking for an internship, of course, you would do internship here. You wouldn't use a keyword entry because the whole point of an internship is to gain experience. You could kind of tailor it, like let's say you want to find an internship in Dallas. Put that in. You can see there's 38, which 38 different internships to look at isn't as bad as if you're seeing hundreds of different roles. So that's just kind of what the hands-on process looks like when you are, using Handshake to find stuff. Kind of referencing back when I said when it says apply externally, even though this is through Handshake, once you click this, it's going to redirect you through to their website. But Hewitt already knows that you kind of came from Handshake just because they have that tracking feature. So just a tip on that part there. You can see they have some more. Same thing, responsibilities, qualifications. So this is what you use again to tailor your job or internship search. Yeah, so this is everything we kind of went through. Here is, I would say, the most updated list that I could get for you guys. Mentioned all of the stuff already. There's Glassdoor. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. LinkedIn's job search tool or internship search tool is also really good. I would say those are the top ones. Handshake and LinkedIn are my go-tos for most students. And then the third one would be the company-specific websites. These were the websites for government jobs, usajobs.gov, governmentjobs.com, whatever. So yeah, this is that list. Oops, get back to that. And then if you are interested in nonprofits or, work abroad, you have those there. And then there's a couple things. You don't have to write these down. Again, I'm going to send this slide or this presentation to everyone. So some reminders, I think these are obvious as well. Don't expect jobs. You have to kind of you have to put the time and effort into applying for the things. Don't take shortcuts where you're using the same resume or you're not being intentional with who you network with or what you apply for. Even if you get callbacks for interviews and then, you weren't selected as the final candidate, don't burn those bridges. Sometimes employers will reach out to people that they have turned down in terms of like if they were like the second person to get the job and they didn't, they'll usually reach out in the future if they have anything in the pipeline that you might be interested in. And then of course, everything I talked about today was just very general, very broad. If you want more specific guidance in terms of your specific job or internship search phase or strategy, if you're not sure if you're doing the right thing, definitely, if you can, book me for an appointment and we can kind of go through this way more in depth, specific to you and your unique circumstances. This slide is very wordy, but just to summarize this, it's just to kind of say, stay positive, make sure you revise each document to the roles that you're applying for. A good way to kind of find or identify the types of positions that you want to apply for is thinking about like the challenges, the companies that are currently working on those types of things and targeting those roles. And then the mentorship piece, if that makes sense for you. And then once you start getting the callbacks for interviews, which is not usually an issue for engineering students, I will say, might be for some other majors, but it's usually a very easy process for engineering students to kind of go towards at least, industry for internships and full-time jobs. If you're doing everything that you need to in terms of some of the things I've talked about, in terms of like the strategic networking, applying for the positions, tailoring the documents, there's no reason at all why you should not be getting callbacks for interviews. So I would say it's much easier than people think. Well, I'll skip this one. This is like after an internship. But just some takeaways that this is basically everything I just said again. But apart from that, some other things that we help you guys with, grad school, if that's something that's in the works for you, if you want some help with actually practicing mock interviews, if let's say you've gotten the job offers or the internship offers and you want to negotiate in terms of like the salary, the working hours, the benefits, I'm here to help with all that stuff for the department is. And we just do a ton more different workshops. So in addition to this one, we also do resume writing, more in-depth interviewing skills. The list kind of goes on. Anything you could think of when it comes to the career space. So we have about 5 minutes, but I'm just going to leave this last part here open to Q&A. If anyone has any questions as it relates to the job search or the internship search process, or anything specific to the presentation that I can answer for you.